Hello and welcome to another Aston Originals podcast with me, Brian Sudlow. I'm a lecturer in history at Aston University, and I'm joined again today by Mr John Dyson from Broadway Academy. John, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Brian.
Now then, if you've not already seen Mr Dyson's other videos on tips for A-levels, then go and check them out. But in this video, we want to talk a little bit about sources, because sources are such a crucial feature of history study more generally, but also especially of the history A-level exam. So, John, over to you. I mean, what is meant exactly by sources, and how significant are they for the exam?
Yeah, sources are very significant for A-level students. One of the only three assessment objectives on every exam board's scheme relates to sources. Formally, I guess, always known as primary sources. So whichever exam board you work with, they will be giving you sources that are from the time that you are studying. And what the government want effectively is for students to act as if they are historians. They want students to think as historians think about sources.
Okay, and so is this therefore, has this come from the national curriculum therefore, or is it just the exam boards that are calling for these things?
Well, the changing A-levels in 2015 under Michael Gove, if you remember him, he wanted to make exams more rigorous, more academic, and one of those things was this move towards students, as I say, thinking as historians think.
Okay, so look, I mean, how are what's the best way to approach sources as someone's writing a history essay?
Yeah, however, again, depending on the exam board, they ask the question in certain ways, in slightly different ways. But the main theme that they're asking is how valuable are particular sources to a historian studying a particular topic. That doesn't mean, of course, one-sided or biased. Those words have kind of gone out of fashion a bit. It is, are they useful? Are they valuable to the historian if they were studying Mrs Thatcher's Britain, Charles I, the Crusade, whatever it might be? How valuable are those sources? And when a student kind of gets their head around, well, there are millions of sources out there. E.H. Carr, I had to read when I was first learning to teach, gave the metaphor of kind of fishing in the ocean for sources, and there are millions of them. So if there are two or three on an exam paper, how valuable are these two or three to you, the student, the historian, studying whatever it is that you might be studying?
Okay, and so what are the kinds of questions that a student should be asking themselves about the source that they've got in front of them?
Yeah, so again, it varies a little bit what the exam board asks, but it boils down to three things. It boils down to where has that source come from? They will give you what's often called the provenance, a little bit underneath or above the source that tells you where it came from, who wrote it, what magazine it was published in, where the speech was made, those kind of things. Now, history teachers across the years are really good at our acronyms. Many students will have learned things like NOP, Nature, Origin, Purpose, TAP, Time, Author, and Place. Whatever it might be, the student should look to pick apart that provenance. The exam board will have put various bits to it, as I say, the date, the time, the place it was made, the magazine it was in. Those things were there for a reason. So as much as they possibly can from the provenance as a first point of call. Then, of course, the source itself, the content of the source, and really there's three bits to that. What does it say? What can the student work out or infer from it? And how does it say it? Some AQA use the language of the tone of the source. Is there an emotion behind the speech that can be kind of worked out or inferred? Both those first two, the provenance and the content, of course, were really supported with own knowledge. If there is a provenance of a source about Mrs Thatcher's Britain and it's written by Mrs Thatcher in 1985, then it's worth commenting on what was going on in 1985 to support the student's point of view. And similarly with the content, if there's something in there that the student knows a little bit about, their own knowledge can support that. Those two things then lead to a judgment in terms of the question. I've used my acronym before of ATFQ. There are various questions that the exam board might ask. But whatever they do ask, and however many sources they ask it about, they're looking for a judgment that in one way or another boils down to the value of that source or those sources in a particular context.
Okay. So it seems like what's important, really important for students as well, is to realise that there's a medium and a message. There's the content of the source, but then there's the source in itself, as it were, and how it operates as an instrument of communication and a kind of tool for communication.
Yeah, very much so, and they deliberately spend time thinking about they're going to tell you about the provenance. I believe they as a rule of thumb for students, they should be able to pick 3 or 4 things out of the provenance that are worth commenting on.
Okay. So look, thanks very much indeed. Any final tips about sources that students need to think about?
Well, I think it's those 3 things. If they think provenance, content, judgment, write those at the top of their paper. PCJ, I tell my students, with the ATFQ for answering the question. They won't be too far. They won't be too far off.
Excellent. ATFQ, answer the flipping question. Right. So, fantastic, John. Thanks ever so much indeed for your advice about sources. And good luck to everyone who's watching the video with their history A-level essays. And have a good spring. Thank you.